My mom really urged me to write that fan letter because everybody said I looked like Carol Burnett. I honestly don't remember. And people used to accuse me of studying her and trying to copy her mannerisms. And I honestly don't remember seeing Carol Burnett a whole lot on television. I remember seeing Once Upon a Mattress, mostly because we were going to do it as our high school musical. But I did not audition for the lead, and I thought the girl that did it was much better than I ever could have been. I was busy singing with the Young Americans, so it didn't never occur to me to audition for that. And I remember seeing her occasionally on The Entertainers, but mostly because I had a crush on John Davidson. So I certainly didn't study Carol Burnett. I was really trying to be Mary Tyler Moore. You know, I wore my hair in the flip. I wore the capris. I was really trying to. That's who I really was in love with. Well, her and Dick Van Dyke both. I was in love with both of them. And then I cut my hair really short before I went into high school, and everybody said, "You look just like Carol Burnett." So my mom said, "Write the fan letter," because I was a big fan letter writer when I was a kid. Well, I had stuff all over my bedroom walls, everybody that was on television at the time. But I gotta say, mostly the guys. No offense, Carol. It was mostly, you know, like Johnny Crawford and Fabian and Clint Eastwood and, you know, the who's who of guys that were on television at the time. The whole way I got on the show is so coincidental. And I many times said to Carol, "What are the odds?" And she said to me many times, "You will find that the fan letters that you get that are actually in English, that actually have something to say other than, 'May I please have a picture,' are very few and far between." And she's right, and probably even more so today. Who's writing letters? I guess you just tweet your favorite celebrity or something, right? Yeah. I was singing with the Young Americans when I met her. And I remember going to the director of the Young Americans when I got this audition. And he sat me down. He said, "You listen to me, young lady. What are the odds of anything happening here? And if you back out of the summer tour and this doesn't pan out, which very frankly, what are the odds? You're not coming back in the middle of the tour. You're gone." And at the time, it was a very traumatic decision for me to say, I think maybe I'm going to roll these dice. It was very traumatic. It was one of those pivotal moments in my life that honestly almost could have gone either way. Yeah, but a major decision. And then I think I told the story about the first week at CBS and wandering up there and meeting Red Skelton and just seeing this huge stage. And I think I embraced it, but it was very surreal. The whole thing was very surreal to me. I think I was a goofy kid. I remember doing a little comedy stuff in the Young Americans. I would always do the funny songs. I was like the comedy relief in the little movie we did, The Young Americans. But honestly, really, and I don't know if it's because I grew up in such close proximity to Hollywood, that it just never occurred to me. My dad worked for years at Max Factor, so I was always up in Hollywood. But I honestly thought I was going to be a dental hygienist. I was going to learn to clean teeth, marry a rich dentist, and hang it up. That's what I thought. Maybe because I had a crush on her. I had to have a lot of male crushes, didn't I? Yeah. It's kind of hard not to learn from her, if just by osmosis. And I think certainly one of the most important things I learned was how I think a show should run. Because not all shows run like that. She is just very giving and loving and caring and nurturing. And my God, when I was early on the show, she'd say, "Well, we need the writers to come down and watch this. We need to change this. Vicki needs a new joke on page 13. And I was a needle pointer back in the days. I'd go, "I do?" And she'd say, "Hush, yes, you do." That just doesn't really happen. There's definitely a trickle-down theory from the top. That's really true. Carol knew everybody on her staff, everybody on her crew. She cared about everybody. If you were doing something funny, she'd be the first person out of her dressing room on the side laughing with the audience. She was giving and nurturing, and And I think that's why the show had that warm, loving quality. Yeah, she's like a really real person. I mean, Lord knows, put her on a pedestal for, I don't know that I ever said more than 2 words to her for a lot of years, because it was so surreal the way I even came to be there. It was so surreal. And I sort of like idolized her while at the same time I was learning from her. I don't know what happened to me would ever happen nowadays. I mean, the closest thing I can think of is American Idol, but those people are so they're so great before they even get on the air at all. I think nowadays the Suits would come downstairs and say, get rid of her and get an actress. I don't know where that happens to anybody. Harvey would say to me, you have no idea. He would recount a lot of ugly stories about people not being very nice. And I do think I said in that big round table that a lot of the older people that had worked with Carol or had been around for a lot of years would all the time say to me, wait till you get out into the real world of showbiz, kid, because this ain't it. This is a very special place. It was just so incredibly well organized, that show. And it's to this day, people will say to me, sometimes people will say, what exactly is it that an executive producer does? Well, a good executive producer, from what I have learned, hires all the best people, puts them in the right positions, and then backs off and lets them do their job. And that doesn't happen a whole lot anymore. But that show ran like a top because everybody got to excel at what they were hired for. Nobody got a thumb put on them. Nobody got squashed. It was all about fly, baby, fly. Carol had a show to run. And Harvey, being the team player that he is, and Harvey, of everybody, would just work and work and work on a sketch when we all knew it wasn't working. He would never say die. I will say that about Harvey. And he was technically trained as an actor, so comedy was very serious business to him. And when I came on board, and he used to hate it when I would tell these stories, but I swear to God, I think it was either take me under his wing or kill me. Because he would say to me, you could forget stage right, stage left, you couldn't even find the toilet. So I think he really felt it was his duty, since I was going to be around, to train me. And he would work with me on dialects and props, and he's the first person who ever said to me, make your props your friends. He'd tell me who I was in a lot of those movie takeoffs. I didn't know those old movies, like Carol did. He definitely, I think, taught me most everything I know about comedy. And I used to say to him, do I need to go to school? And he'd say, no, you're here. You're at the Harvard School of Comedy. You just sit down and shut up and watch. And it's true. I would sit in that audience. I mean, I started at UCLA the same fall I started on Carol's show. And the deal was you may go to college as long as you're here in the morning by 11 o'clock. And so I was on and off campus at UCLA, with my scarf on my head before. That was my college life. I didn't really have much of a college life. Took everything you could take at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And finally got to the point where I needed to declare a major. And I thought, well, I guess I'll declare theater because I guess that's where I'm going. And then I couldn't commit to that because they wanted me to do, you were required to do a quarter of crew work every year. You were required to audition for everything. If you got the part, you were required to do it. And we were, in the beginning, blocking on Fridays and taping on Saturdays. And those were show days at UCLA. So I got to the point where I just didn't know what to do. I went to my favorite theater professor who had the watch and the watch pocket and the pipe, and it was theater history. And I said, what am I going to do? And he said, you want my advice? You go get a notepad and sit in the audience and watch the best teachers in the whole world. You are where every kid in this department would give their right arm to be. And it devastated my parents because my dad went to UCLA. My mom always wanted me to go to college because she didn't. And so I said, okay. She was just so devastated that I said, okay, I will declare a dance major. And because they were going to be much more lenient about the performing part. And the first day, my counselor said, you have to go in and take Dance 1A. And I had been, going to dance classes for years in Hollywood. You have to do Dance 1A, and that was interpretive, creative. And I remember the first day in class, I'm lying on the floor next to this giant girl next to me, and the teacher says, today we will be seaweed. We are rolling around on the ocean floor. And I'm going, oh, for crying out loud. Could we just do a traveling time step? Rolling around on the floor didn't we do this in high school? And this giant girl rolls over on top of me, and I just went, oh man, I can't do this. I got up, I went over, I got my backpack, and the teacher's still going, and the waves are splashing over, and she's watching me pick up my stuff and leave. And that was the end of, I couldn't do it. I left UCLA. Well, I think coincidentally, 2 years, which is roughly what Carol did there. Yeah. Yeah, he's in a completely different world. Yeah, he's different game plan. Yeah. That's probably why Tim and Harvey were so great together, because Harvey was so on script and always trying to fix stuff and make it right that he was probably sitting there just totally fascinated by Tim's brain, which is probably why he would lose it. Fascinating to him. Yeah. So Lyle was like second youngest to me, second greenest, definitely green. He hadn't done, a whole lot. And he and his wife Sharon had just gotten married. One was more gorgeous than the next, but they were so sweet. And they were just out here from St. Wis. And they had a little apartment not too far from CBS. And I remember I would go home at lunch with Lyle. Sharon would cook us lunch. And we were very, very close, really good friends. And he was just very down to earth and sweet. When he did get popular, I do remember Lyle had a fan club. I was just hysterical. Did Lyle tell you about his fan club? It was $2 to join, and you got a picture of him, and you got a little button that said, be reliable. And yes, he was making a little side living there with his fan club. There's nothing that Bob could have done that would have ever shocked me, I just thought he was a genius. Oh my God, it's just like playing dress up. They were so beautifully made, and he was so meticulous about his costumes, and you didn't sit down in his costumes. Yeah, to this day, I don't sit down in wardrobe. And people all the time will go, well, just have a seat and relax. We're not shooting for another hour. And I'm like, I can't. I can't. I was not trained that way. It'll wrinkle. They don't care. Well, okay. Not the way I was raised. Yeah, and I remember I used to take the kids at Halloween to Bob Mackie's, where they store everything at Elizabeth Courtney Costumes, and borrow those beautiful, they were amazing. They were amazing. I just remember always feeling either very funny or very beautiful when he was finished. Even his ordinary outfits. You get out into the real world and you go, we all the time say in the airport, Bob Mackie could not do it better. He just had an eye for, he was just, still is, but he's wonderful. And a wonderful comedian, a wonderful comedic eye for all the details, every single detail. I remember thinking that Mrs. Tudball was a little bit over the top. Like, really, we've gone too far. I do remember thinking that. But other than that, no, all of his costumes were just great. They were amazing. And I know Carol has told you this, but there were many, many times that you just didn't know who you were until Bob dressed you. And I tell the story all the time about him, that he built Mama into a slip, so it's all padded, but you can just step into it and zip it on, and it's got the lace trim around the bottom, and it's that body, the butt and the boobs, and then the very simple little polyester frock, and the gray wig and the round glasses, and he's just meticulous about all of it. The Barbara Bush pearls. The only thing I did to contribute to the outfit at all was to mush the socks down, because that reminded me of my grandma, who used to wear those knee highs, but they were always wrinkled. And wonderfully comfortable shoes. He handed me a purse, and he threw a sweater over my shoulders. And when he stepped aside and I looked in the mirror, I said, "Good Lord, I'm dysfunctional." It was there. There she was, come to life. Like you can envision it in your head, but boy, once he puts you in the whole garb, it's like, oh my God, there she is.